Okay, Psycho Steve. Let's just go right to it. A couple things have to preface this episode. First thing is Psycho Steve and I already recorded an episode about a month ago, and my dumbass lost the file, which was heartbreaking because this was probably one of the guests that I was most proud to have in my fucking house, man. It was nuts. So that sucked. Luckily, he was gracious enough to re-record it, so he just came over and we did it again, and we had a great time, man. Psycho Steve, a lot of people think to themselves, man, that name sounds familiar. Why do I recognize that name? Because you've probably given him more money than you could probably imagine if you're someone who goes to shows in Phoenix or just Arizona in general. Psycho Steve Presents puts on basically a really good amount of the shows happening at Van Buren. He is the owner of the Rebel Lounge. Like crazy shit, dude. Like, I mean, he put on the Frank Turner show. He put on the Front Bottom show. It just goes on and on and on. I'm sure he's put on shows recently for much bigger artists than those guys. But, hey, those were the ones that I went to. So, motherfucker knows how to do it. This guy's been in the scene forever. I think it's like 20-something years or something like that. He's been doing this, something crazy. This episode has more truth bombs that every artist needs to hear than any episode I've ever done ever. He says some shit that just checks you, man. Like, it's real. The shit that he says is true. It's real. And a lot of people don't want to hear it. A lot of people in local bands don't want to fucking hear it, but it's so true, and it's coming from someone who could not be any more supportive. He's the owner of Rebel fucking Lounge, for God's sakes. So he knows what he's talking about. Please trust him when he speaks. And he doesn't need any more introduction than that. But I do got to mention Cope Notes, our sponsor for this show. You guys have heard me talk about it before. You get random text messages throughout the day that give you little nice pick-me-ups that target negative thinking habits. You don't know when you're going to get them. You get them every day. I think it's like $10 a month for it. It's like 30 cents per text, I think, is what it kind of averages out to, which is ridiculously cheap. I mean, come on, you lose more money than that every fucking day in your car just falling out of your pants, dude. So it's totally something that you can afford. It's something that you should do. People like me, people like a lot of the listeners of the show, people who have some degree of mental illness could definitely use something like this, man. Text COPE to 33222 and start a free trial. You get like a 7-day free trial or something like that, and then you end up spending not very much money on it anyway. It doesn't really matter. So there you go. Cope Notes, fantastic. Don't have to give them any personal information or anything like that. They're super great, super awesome. The guy that runs it is in a band called Prison. Check them out too. And that's it. That's what I got for you guys. Please listen the fuck up. Lube up those ears for Psycho Steve. Okay, so we're back, guys. I've talked about this before, but I lost a bunch of episodes, unfortunately, because I'm an idiot. And one of them so graciously came back on the show. The one who I thought was the least likely to come back on the show came back on the show. Steve, thank you so much for coming back, dude, and doing this with me.
No problem. I am sure this will be nowhere near as good as the one that no one gets to hear.
I know. Oh well. Maybe one day I'll be able to find some crazy wizard who can pull it up on my computer. I'll like call the FBI and have them pull everything back up. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I didn't know about this beforehand, what's this crazy bowling thing that you've got going on? The Independent Bowl, something or other?
Independence Bowl, yeah. So it's this somewhat annual bowling tournament we've done of local bands and local businesses. We started it in 2008. It's all a charity event for Local First Arizona, because a lot of times when I have ideas on things I want to do, it's just like, oh, that feels like it should be more of a charity thing.
Yeah.
But we've skipped a couple of years with like the opening of Rebel and some other things, so we're only on our 6th one. But yeah, it's just a bowling tournament aimed at local bands and businesses that are around bands. So we've got a bunch of venues, some other businesses that are related, some businesses that are not, a bunch of bands. It's this Sunday. We've got about 30 teams signed up, so it'll already have happened by the time this airs probably.
When does it come out? When does it happen?
It's this Sunday.
This Sunday. Okay.
Yeah, so probably
We'll see what
happen by the
happens.
time when this airs.
Maybe. I feel bad. I feel like I might release this one early because it was supposed to have already come out by now.
Whatever, but yeah, so the idea is just, you know, if you do any sort of show or anything, you're inherently going to limit the audience based on that show. You know, if you book a show with a bunch of metal bands, then only the metal fans are going to be interested, or if you book a country show, only the country fans are going to be interested, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the idea is, like, how can we get all these bands in, like, the most neutral setting where it's just, you know, it's just fun and neutral and, you know, everyone can have a good time, and who doesn't like bowling, or, you know, maybe not be, you know, it's the most amateur, just for fun tournament ever.
It
like,
really is, yeah.
You know, so I have no idea how to run a bowling tournament. The 5 previous ones are proof of that. And so, you know, it's kind of not the point. You know, it's
That's
just
cool.
having fun.
Are you guys having any music playing? Any live music? Or anything like that?
Nothing live. We'll have some local DJs spinning sort of cool tracks during it. But, you know, it's, the whole point's just get everyone in a room and see what happens.
That's awesome. Where is it happening?
It's this place called Let It Roll Bowl up in Sunny Slope.
Sunny Slope.
Yeah. So it's I think it's the only independently owned bowling alley in Arizona. I could be wrong on that fact, but I think it's definitely in Phoenix. But you know, they've been there for a long time, and it's just a neat little old bowling lane. And yeah,
that's super cool.
Yeah, and all the proceeds go to Local First Arizona. Just because it's felt like the most natural place to send it.
What is? I've never heard of that before. What is that?
Oh, you haven't?
Uh-uh.
So Local First Arizona is an organization run by Kimber Lanning, who owned Modified Arts and Stinkweeds Records.
Oh shit,
and,
that's the same person?
Yeah, so Kimber from Stinkweeds and Modified. Only now her time is mostly spent on Local First, but they just advocate local businesses and local economy and do advocacy, you know, lobbying state legislators and stuff like that to have policies that favor businesses in Arizona. And then they do a lot of education for the benefits of shopping local. And they've been a big emphasis of theirs now has been like going around the state and going to, you know, the Jeromes and Bisbees and Sholo and Heber and cities like that, and like really kind of helping promote the local economies there.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't imagine a whole lot of local economy going on in Heber.
Well, that's kind of the irony, is whereas there is a lot of that's very affected by big, you know, so you get a lot of small businesses out there, and then a lot of big national change. So,
interesting.
Yeah, so a charity I've done a lot of work for, done a lot of fundraisers with, and volunteered for. So they put on the Devoured Culinary Classic, which this year moved from the Phoenix Art Museum to the Botanical Gardens, and they do a lot of events, and they do like happy hour mixers with businesses and
very cool
educational stuff. They've done a lot of work with teaching smaller businesses about social media and digital marketing and stuff like that. So
that's one of those things that almost can like sink any kind of business right now, is not being able to run your social media properly.
Yeah, well, it's it's a new age where, you know, that stuff's 24/7, and you know, if you've got a mechanic or a flower shop where it's like used to be, we run a couple of ads and that's our marketing plan, and that works, and now that just doesn't, you know, takes a whole nother skill set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. It's hard too, because you get so I mean, some businesses are great with it. Like, I mean, there's 1,000, but the first one that comes to mind would be like Shirts and Things. Like they can run their social media like crazy. They can do all kinds of stuff. While at the same time, like, they're old. I mean, they've been around for like 25 years or something like that. But I still see them on social media posting videos and stuff like that.
Huh? Yeah, I haven't seen their stuff, but obviously known that store forever. No, but I always say I just luck out in that, like, my business is like the absolute best for social media. Yeah. Like I've never short for content. You know, I have the problem. I have too much content to post. It's always news shows. There's always news articles that I don't have to generate. You know, there's the artists are getting reviews on their own that I can share. They're creating videos on their own that, you know, we're sharing their videos. We're announcing dates on a date, you know, almost daily basis, but definitely a week. You know, I announce a half dozen shows every week. So it's just a ton of content.
Yeah,
content people want to find. It's content people want to find and want to engage in. And I just can't imagine some of these other businesses that just, if you're sitting around trying to think how you're creating content for, your tire store, that it seems like that would be a hard.
Yeah, I see that. I see your posts all the time, and I just wonder, like, is there a max limit of posts that you can sponsor at one time? Like, because I see you have run so many.
We're running a ton of, we have anywhere from 50 to 80 shows announced at a given time. So that's
crazy, man.
Possibly that many ads running at a given time.
Do you have like an office?
Yeah.
Like a space?
Yeah,
okay,
we have an office. There's 4 of us work out of there.
Very cool.
And that doesn't count the venue staff at Rebel. So
yeah, got it.
Just on the marketing and booking and design, and so we've got one person, Shannon, who just does a lot of our design stuff, and then 3 of us working on booking and admin and
that's awesome,
marketing, and so
yeah, that's awesome, man. It's cool that you have like an actual space set up now.
Well, no, I mean,
not now. I guess you've had it for a while.
Yeah, but it's now the point. It's long past the job. I was there around 9 or 9:30 this morning and left when I came here half an hour ago, and most days I'm there all day until it's time to go to a show. So
yeah, that's awesome. I loved so for those of you who don't know, he just put on a show at Van Buren with Frank Turner, who we talk about all the time on the show, and Lucero and Homeless Gospel Choir, who was amazing that night. He got so many fans. It was crazy. Like being able to be in the front row and like be surrounded by everyone's reaction to him, and like I know like all the words of these songs, but I'm hanging out with people who don't know and seeing their like faces and their reactions to certain things, and like I literally looked over and saw 2 different people on their phones like saving his stuff to their playlist so they could hear it later, and I was like, yes, because he's such a funny dude. He's such a good performer. He
seems like the essential I'm opening for Frank Turner sort of act.
Yeah,
it reminds me a lot of Beads on Toast or Sean from AJJ, or like I don't know,
totally.
I don't know, just seems like perfect act open for Frank Turner. Yeah,
it was great. And he had his Crocs on, which he just got a tattoo of, by the way, which was really funny. I guess he had a thing on Twitter where like if he reached X amount of reblogs or reposts or whatever, he would get a Croc tattoo. So now he has a Croc tattoo and it says Punk Croc at the bottom. And that was awesome. It was really cool too, like being immersed in the show and then seeing you just kind of like standing there smiling on the edge of the stage. I was like, yeah, Steve. And then you saw me and my girlfriend fangirling there at like 11 a.m.
Yeah,
that was wild.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Yeah, we could have showed up at 4, and we still would have been the first people in line.
You definitely could have.
Because when we saw him at Livewire, we drove around like what was that, 2 years ago now, I think. When we drove around the venue, it was like 1:00, and there were already like 2 people lined up. So we always just kind of assumed that we were always going to have to line up early for his shows. But I think those people were just really crazy because I've always been front row ever since. It's been fine. But yeah, man, it was crazy. It sucked like sitting out there all day. We had to watch some like homeless guy's beer for a little while. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Some dude came up to us and he's like, "Hey man, I need to go to the whatever building and get my social security number, and like I need to get a new social security card. Can you guys like watch my Mickeys?" It's like, all right, sure, whatever. And then he was like, and then he came back and he actually got it, and he like showed us the paperwork, and he was super proud, and he took his beer and he started yelling at cars at how excited he was.
I believe every second of that. No, but I also now am at a point where like I absolutely hate waiting in line for anything.
Yeah.
Like there are very few things in life that are worth waiting in line for.
Yeah. No, I'm that way too. It's her. I told her, I was like, man, I could totally mezzanine this show, and I even texted you about it.
I like that you're trying to you're trying to blame it on your girlfriend, and we all know it is totally you. She's like, who is this guy we're seeing? And you're like, I talk about him all the time, and she's like, I don't listen. I bet that's how that really played out, right?
Oh man, I fucking wish. It was one of those things. I tried to get her into Frank Turner for a while, and she just like didn't get it. And then one day she heard Substitute, and then that was it. Like it was like over. She's got like 4 tattoos of his now. I only have 2, so that's one thing. So yeah, I mean, it is crazy. It is equal though. But the worst thing that was, we went to Front Bottoms a couple weeks ago, or we went to New Mexico to see the Front Bottoms a couple weeks ago because they weren't playing here, and now I guess they fucking are. They announced the dates.
We just announced it last week.
Yeah, well,
October 5th, I believe.
I should have asked. Yeah, it is October 5th. I should have asked you before we drove.
I never remember that anymore without staring at my calendar. But
really?
That one I remember.
That's awesome. Now that I see that, I should have asked you like a month ago if Front Bottoms were gonna come to Arizona because we drove to fucking New Mexico to see them, and then they announced it like a week later. So, dude,
awesome.
Albuquerque is
were they
not fun.
Were they at Sunshine Theater?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. It was interesting. We almost saw 2 fights break out. The crowd was like they were way too big for that venue. Like we were like packed on top of each other inside that place.
Yeah,
like I mean, I thought
it's
Van
not
Buren
really.
was
I mean,
packed.
That's one where Albuquerque there isn't a like because I think that's like 1,000 cap room or something.
Something like that, yeah.
And then you've got the a 10,000 cap amphitheater or whatever, and there is no mid-sized room above.
Yeah.
There's no sort of larger theater or something. It's just Albuquerque.
Have you spent much time in Albuquerque?
I wouldn't say much time. I've been there on tour a few times.
Yeah,
I've never been to the Sunshine.
It was cool. The Sunshine Theater was actually really cool because we were waiting outside in the heat, and they opened the bar before they opened the doors, so everyone 21 over could just wait inside the bar. So that was pretty cool. We left our 20-year-old friend outside.
Awesome. Yeah. I still want to really go to, and I haven't made it yet, but I want to this fall, is Meow Wolf up in Santa Fe.
I don't know what that is. What is that?
Oh, you haven't heard about Meow Wolf? So it's this weird art installation / venue / I don't know what the fuck it is.
Okay.
But it's this big art installation that's kind of like a weird mixture of Disneyland meets Beetlejuice meets a music venue. So they do shows. They have a small room that they do shows in.
Oh, well, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, and they're about to open, or they're working on, I don't know how timelines, but they're working on Denver and Vegas to open more. But it was initially, a lot of the funding initially came from George R.R. Martin, the author of the Game of Thrones series. And so I think they employ something like 70 artists full time.
Wow.
So it's this whole weird artist collective in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh shit, they've got some bands playing.
Yeah.
Like, they got Hop Along, Shaky Grave. Are you putting on the Shaky Grave show here?
I am not.
Okay.
That just happened at Van Buren.
Did it? Yeah. Oh, did it just happen? Got it.
I think that was last week.
Last week? Yeah.
But yeah, no, they do a lot of the shows we do at Rebel or Crescent, and they get. It's one of those that it's like so like bands know about it and talk about it, and it's one of those, they've got tons of national and international press where they get some really big bands that just want to play there. Like they just had Future Islands not that long ago, and bands that would never play a room that small. But it's like, hey, let's go to Santa Fe and play this weird, funky space.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, they
so
got like Rooney and fucking Remo Drive. That's crazy.
I'm doing both those shows here.
Nice.
So you look at their calendar, and it's half the Rebel calendar, because they do a lot of the same kind of stuff.
Speaking of your calendar, I took last time you were on the show, you were telling me when it comes to booking international acts, always go for the publicists, right? That's because they're the ones who are working.
If you're talking about booking them onto the podcast and stuff, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That would be the way to go through that.
So I have this thing now that I've been doing where I just go through because I feel like my show might be somewhat inaccessible as far as I wouldn't be able to reach a lot of Crescent bands, and I definitely couldn't reach a lot of Van Buren bands. But I feel like Rebel bands I could probably reach a little easier.
Probably.
So I've just been killing your calendar. I've just literally been going through your calendar and going to the websites for
No, that's how you do it. And the other one is like everything else, where it's like if you were build a relationship with these publicists and they go, yeah, this little band of mine, very few people are talking about. They've got a few cool reviews here and there, but that's it. That band's hungry and wants to do a podcast and wants to do anything they can to get expressed. And then if you do a couple with them, that same publicist who would say yes in a second for a show at Rebel, that might be the same publicist who's representing all the bands at Van Buren, where if you reached out about their bands at Van Buren, they'd be like, nah, we don't have time for this.
Yeah.
We're doing MTV tomorrow, or we're doing NPR tomorrow. We don't have time for this. But if you build a relationship where that publicist, now they listen to some of the podcasts and they hear the bands, their smaller bands tell them, hey, we had a great time on this. It was really interesting. It was worthwhile. Then they go, oh, yeah, we'll say yes to this. We'll pitch it to my bigger clients because their smaller clients have already vouched for it.
Yeah.
So it's like it's all, same in everything else.
I'm stoked, man. I'm really excited for the Lost Dog Street Band. Like, I love them, and they're coming to Rebel, right?
Yeah.
I'm really excited for that. Okay, so check this out. So I emailed, because sometimes I just because it's just an email. Like, I'll shoot them out to some people who I feel like I'm probably not going to be able to get in touch with, but fuck it, why not? You're right. So I sent one to Andrew W.K.'s publicist, and he fucking got back to me the next day, and he was like, hey, Andrew would love to do it, but it's his first night of tour, so he's not going to be available, but stay in touch because he's interested. And I just my jaw just fucking hit the floor.
Yeah, that's the other one is you never know when that's down the road, or it takes 2 or 3 times, or what their days, especially in Phoenix, you get where everyone's traveling in and they're traveling out. They're probably not spending a lot of time here. They're not showing up early because they've got an overnight drive, so they're, it's a little harder to schedule stuff like that in Phoenix than it is, if you're in LA and you've got to go to San Diego or you've got to go to Orange County, it's like, yeah, we've got all morning to kill before the next show. You can kind of fill more of that stuff, but in Phoenix, there's just not a lot of time. So you never know where, the next time it might be a fly-in, or the next time you might have that time, or might have the day off the next day, or, you just don't know. The other one is there's this music manager who does a bunch of podcasting and sort of educational stuff, Steve Remy, the Red Man, who he managed his big claim to fame is he did managed Incubus for a long time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's Incubus.
Is this
Red Man Live? I think is his thing.
But
he was a big promoter in the 80s, and then managed Incubus for a long, long time, and being around. I don't know his resume. He's done a ton of things, but the thing he always says over and over again is, "You don't get it if you don't ask."
Yeah.
And that's
totally.
his just over and over again his mantra, and you just never know when that, hits someone at the right time.
Yeah, man, that's Epic Records was his. I guess that was his thing here, and it says Incubus is right next to his face.
Yeah. So,
that's
he managed them for a long, from the start for a long time.
That is super cool, man. I was, they're one of those bands that I really like. I loved them for a long time, and either people liked them or they didn't. It was one of those bands that's a lot of people write off, and I'm like, no, man, they're really great musicians. They were super good, but everyone kind of writes them off because they're kind of a radio band or whatever. But
yeah. But if anyone wants to learn more about how music business works, he's got a lot of great videos and interviews online with interviewing different artists and managers and producers and agents. Some really good stuff.
That's what you should do. Just hold a mic back and forth, public access.
Well, we've done some of that stuff. We've done some panels, and we're actually working on bringing back. About to announce soon. We did about 2 years ago. We did a series of panels at Rebel Lounge with different interviewing different people involved in the music scene around here, and we're working on rebranding and then bringing back in the near future, because very much geared at helping the new local artists. Is sort of really the goal.
Yeah, dude, I'd love to do it. Thank you. No, I'm just fucking. But yeah, dude, I love that Rebel does stuff like that. I like that Rebel did Robbie did a little thing there at he do some kind of seminar or talk or something.
I think
that
no, that was what he did. He was on one of our panels.
Okay, got it.
So he was on one of our panels. And definitely when we rebranded, he's definitely one of the people I want to have back and
he's
do
so
again.
Much fun.
So yeah, but I ramble to lots of bands when they ask my advice, and sometimes I do it in front of more bands, since so. But
awesome.
I've done being on panels at South by Southwest and CMJ and NAMM and
What is NAMM like? I've never been to NAMM before. Is it like? Is it cool? Is it like? Is the hype real?
I think it depends on what you're going for. The thing is, it's a trade show of like music gear is the main core of it. And the first year I went and wandered the trade floor, and I don't know anything about any of that. Like I don't care about new pedals. I don't care about effect. Like I'm not into gear. I'm not a musician. I'm not into gear. I'm not a producer. So it's like Pro Tools is demoing their new patches, and Fender has their new guitar, and someone else has their new pedals, and Orange is showing off their new amps, and that's the core of what it is. Mm-hmm. And so if you're into that stuff, like great, it's that's what it is. That's the core of it. So if you want to go play around with a bunch of new pedals that aren't on the market yet, and talk to the sales rep from Fender about what makes the new guitar better than the last one, you're gonna love it. I don't care about those things. I mean, like I'm not gonna buy a new pedal, so I'm not really the demo for that. But then they do in addition to that. So the history on that is originally it was just a trade show for music buyers, and so it was if you were buying that stuff from Milano's Music or Guitar Center or whatever music store, and you're like, what are we going to stock this year? That's what it was aimed at. And then like all trade shows and cons, it's now become consumer facing. Mm-hmm. So originally it was very industry facing. Musicians didn't even know it happened, and now every musician knows about it. And it's just like an Apple convention or, a big comic fest if you care about gear. But as they become public facing, they have more and more panels and, side things, which is what I've, spoken on. Like I've done that twice but that was like a panel very much on booking 101. Like how do you start touring? Like did one that was like booking 101 and one was like touring 101, like how to start touring. And then, but they do lots of other panels that it's, some producer talking about Pro Tools and, drummers giving drum lessons kind of, or not drum lessons, but demos and stuff. And, so a lot of musicians like all that stuff. So, if you're an amateur musician or an aspiring musician, there's a lot of neat stuff there.
So what were you there? What was the panel that you were on over there?
We did one that was like sort of smart touring. So it was a touring advice, sort of very like, hey, you're going on your first tour. What should you know? Kind of advice, how to think about it. And then we did one that was very similar. That was like booking 101. Like, how do you start booking a tour? How do you start building those relationships? Like, what's important, what's not? And so the two were actually very like basically the same thought. I mean, a little bit slightly different, but
let's touch on one of those things really quick because it's something that I talk about with bands a lot. But so, what do you think is? I guess like, how does a band make sure that they get paid on the road? Especially if they're a smaller band. Because, I mean, I didn't get paid. Like, for instance, the first couple tours or trips or whatever that I went on, I could have gotten paid for. I mean, I would have made profit, but I would have at least gotten paid out at the end of the night. But I never asked.
Well, I guess that's the first one is to ask. One is just to be very explicit about the deal. What is the deal? What is the arrangement? If it's a percentage, what's the percent? If it's a split... if it's a percent after a certain point, what's that point? Knowing, just being very direct on who is it that's paying you at the end of the night? Whose role is that? Hey, can we hop on this show? Sure, I got a spot for you. Doesn't imply that you're getting paid anything. But I guess the number one way to make sure you get paid on tour is worth being paid on tour. It's like if there's money in economics, then you're going to make something, and if promoters see that, oh, wait, we always make money when this band comes, you're going to get paid, and if other bands see that, if venues and promoters know that they're going to make money, you're going to make money. Yeah. So
there's a couple different ways of looking at it, right? Like you can either look at it as, we're a tiny band and we're trying to have fun and expand a little bit. So we're going to go and we're going to jump on some shows with our friends in California or whatever. And then there's the way to look at it as in like, hey, I want to like do this the business way. I want to try to get paid and get guarantees and stuff like that. But I feel like you have to already have had some kind of impact in order to get that second thing.
No, yeah, and it's one is like if you're just starting as a musician, it's like I don't think any professional athletes got paid for their first game. You know, it's
exactly.
like you work through, you know, if you're an athlete, you work through high school and you work through college and maybe you get a scholarship that's subsidizing it a little bit, you know, and then finally you get drafted and it's like, oh, here's, you know, these athletes are 10 years in before they get a real paycheck, you know, but there's some weird like, hey, I picked up a guitar yesterday. Why aren't I making money? And, you know, it's like, I'm not saying that starting musicians shouldn't make anything,
Totally.
but, you know, but it's like, if you think that in the first 3 months of your band, you're going to be living off of it or should be, I don't
Or
know why.
should be. That's the really important
Yeah.
part.
So, I mean, you know, and it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of range, you know.
I always tell bands just to eat it. Like, you have to eat your first couple of tours. Like, you don't have to, but, like, don't expect to get to, like, come home with a bunch of money when you
Well, I think you should definitely not expect it, but there are things you can do to not be dumb about it or not, you know, just watch your budgets, watch your deals, you know, make sure you're touring places that make sense, you know, and it's, you know, I think it works best when you're getting pulled out of town, not sort of pushing out of town.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
You know, if you can, you know, if you can lock one or two good anchors around something where it's like, oh, we got one good college gig that's paying us, and I can string 4 other shows that are a little risky, and I know that the average is going to be okay because we've got the one good anchor, or I know these 2 shows, they may not have good paychecks, but I know the shows are going to be good because we're playing with these other bands. We're at least going to be in front of people. I can string some other dates around it to make sense, where now I've got 5 shows and hopefully the average is all right.
Yeah.
Versus, you know, I string together 4 shows that are going to be risky and now none of them turned out all right.
Yeah.
So
I always like I always tell people too, like, when it comes to playing shows out of town, like, meet and befriend as many bands that you can who you play with that come through your town. Like, befriend them, get phone numbers, get Facebook contacts, like, hook that shit up, and then make a good impression. Like, make a good impression with these people.
Absolutely.
Like, you can whether even if they don't have a show for you, you can at least crash on their couch or something like that on your way to somewhere else. Like, you can totally.
The other one is, it's one where it's like building all those relationships. It's like, well, maybe that band isn't going to take you out tomorrow. You know, they're not going to. Oh, hey, there's this band in Phoenix that I hung out with once, but in 2-3 years when you're ready and they go, oh yeah, we've been friends with these guys for years now, like, yeah, we want to take them on tour because we've been following, you know, because they've become fans like anybody else. Or it's like, oh, you guys are at our shows every time we're in Phoenix. Yeah, we want you to open for our show.
Show up for shows. Show up for shows. Go out to shows.
Yeah,
like, so you have to go out to fucking shows.
I think that was a theme we talked on last time.
It was.
It's like, just since no one listening had heard it, you know, I always think it's just to repeat, you know, it's always the people I never see that complain the most about the scene, you know, and then it's like the people who are at all the shows, who at other people's shows, I never hear complaining about how no one supports them, you know, and it's like, it's those people that are at everyone else's shows are the ones who everyone else supports. And, you know, I see Trevor from Sundressed at tons of shows. I see Robbie from Playboy at tons of shows. I see the Twin Ponies or Chelsea from Fairy Bones. You know, they're all at shows all the time.
0 Degrees North, too. 0 Degrees North are at fucking every local show. Yeah. I see them constantly.
I had
16.
Yeah, I had a beach laying at Valley Bar on Saturday, and, you know, 2 of the Jimmy Eat World guys in the audience. You know, they toured with them last year, and it's like they, you know, how did those guys spend their Saturday night at home? They, you know, they went and saw a band that they've toured with, you know, and they're friends, and it's like, you know, that's just Jim's always come to tons of shows. You know, they're always at tons of shows and supporting their friends, and, you know, that's something they've been doing for forever. You know,
that's cool, man. It's just it's all about networking. And I tell
No, but I mean, it's not just.
not
I
all
think
about
that.
networking.
Well, networking is a weird word because I think that's what sort of turns a lot of people off on it, and but it is, you know, it's not necessarily about networking in some weird business cocktail lunch, cocktail happy hour in that sense, but in a, it's like all those bands. Building real relationships with all those bands. How do you get on a good tour? You build a real relationship with that band, not just a, hey, they know who we are, and so it's how do you build as many of those relationships as you can, and where it's authentic and real, and that's when it's gonna, that's when something's gonna come out of it.
And the one of the biggest pains in the ass for some people with that one is that in order to do that, usually you have to be a genuine person. Like you have to be like an authentically like good person.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah.
Like, I've had people complain to me about that, and I'm like, "You're a dick. Like, what are you expecting? What are you talking about? Like, you're really unapproachable." Like, and I've had friends like that where I'm like, "Dude, you're standoffish as hell. Like, no one sees you after shows. Like, you have to just like figure out a way." Like, I don't know if you need to talk to somebody or what, but like you need to figure out a way to break these walls down and talk to people. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen.
This is a very much more than most other. I mean, every business or every career or business has a big relationship component, but this one is just so huge. And especially if you're talking about bands going on tour, that band's going like, who do I want to spend 24 hours a day with for 3 weeks? And it's like, if the answer is not you, then you're not getting on that tour, I mean, and there can always be some business reasons where they go, oh, that guy's a dick, but it makes sense. But, a lot of times it's like, who are my friends? Who do I want to hang out with? Especially if you're talking about like the opening slot, especially if you're a homeless gospel choir talking about getting on a Frank Turner tour.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of thought and business going into packaging a Lucero Menzinger's Frank Turner tour. I mean, there's a lot of, okay, who's the best support? But once you get to that first of 4 slot, it's Frank's going, who do I want to take on this? I mean, he could have found 1,000 bands that would love to take that slot.
Yeah.
And he's going, who do I want to see every day?
Yeah.
Who do I want backstage in my green room every day? This dude's the
Derek.
shit. I want to hang out with him every day. And if, people learn really fast.
Yeah. That's awesome. I always think that too whenever I go to see like a big bill and the person who's opening is not local, but it's someone I've never heard of before. It's always like, all right, whose friend is this? Like, who is
a
this?
lot of times it's that simple.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times it's that simple, and there's nothing more to it.
Yeah.
What
was really cool when we saw Front Bottoms, and I don't know what I don't think he's on this upcoming run, but Kevin Devine is the guy that opened for them.
Yeah.
So check this. So he opened for them.
I love Kevin, really good friend of mine.
Is he? Okay, cool.
Yeah, he's great.
I've never heard his music before, or I didn't know anything about him. Like none of us did. Like none of us knew who he was beforehand. And then I looked him up, and I was like, oh, this guy's like super established, and he's like tons of albums, and he's like worked with Manchester Orchestra and shit.
Yeah, he's in a band with all the guys from Manchester called Bad Books.
Oh, that's what it is.
So Bad Books is everybody in Manchester plus Kevin Devine.
Got it.
And he was also playing with, he was doing like auxiliary stuff with Brand New for a while as well.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so he was in the last, he did the last several shows with last year of them being touring, was in that.
You would have loved to see this then, because so he opens the show, just acoustic, and he does all these songs that like I didn't know at the time, but I've since gone back and listened to, and I hear like what they were supposed to, like songs like Bubblegum and stuff that he's kind of put out a long time ago, and some new stuff too, and it was great. But then he comes out and he plays bass for Front Bottoms for their entire 2-hour set, and he is having the time of his fucking life, like literally the whole time he's just jumping around and bouncing, and he's so happy.
He did that at Lollapalooza a couple years ago, played with them, and it was their bass player had like a wedding or something, and they just had one show that their bass player couldn't do, which was Lollapalooza, because it wasn't part of a tour, it was just Lollapalooza, and their bass player, I think he had a wedding or some sort of like family normal normal life thing where he couldn't do Lollapalooza, and Kevin filled in on that. But I actually did shows with them years ago where it was front bottoms were opening for Kevin Devine on a tour.
What?
And
really?
that we did. I think we did the Rhythm Room on that one, but I know we definitely
shit.
did. We definitely did Solar Culture down in Tucson, and this would have been 6-7 years ago. I don't remember when, but it was the front bottoms opening for Kevin Devine.
Here we go. Front bottoms Rhythm Room. Let's see here. The front bottoms. Oh wait, might be a different show because this is them headlining. So this is headlining with Dust Jacket and All My Friends. That's you. You did that show.
Yeah, I did do that show.
But that wasn't the one that they.
That's
opened
not
for
that
Kevin
one.
Devine. I'll just look up front bottoms Kevin Devine Phoenix.
Well, now there's probably.
Yeah, right now there's a bunch of shit. But he was great. Like he was really good, and there were people in the crowd like singing along to his songs and stuff like that.
He's done a ton of tours, and I'm kind of surprised you haven't heard him.
Yeah, I know. I am too. I couldn't believe that I hadn't. I think I've heard the name thrown around, but it was just cool because he changed outfits for like in between, and I couldn't. And I was just thinking to myself, wow, that guy looks a lot like Kevin Devine, but maybe it's just like another like good looking, vaguely bearded guy. They're everywhere. Like who knows if that's him or not.
Vaguely bearded ginger dude.
Yeah. But like he's in the back though. Like the front bottom setup right now, right? Like the couch and like the two people in the back and stuff like that. So he's like in the back, and I couldn't totally make out who he was. And then my buddy who was there with me, Sam, who's Sore Eyes is his project. I was hanging out with him, and he was like, "Dude, that was fucking Kevin Devine." He was getting, and I was like, "Oh shit, it was." And like literally for 2 hours, jumping and smiling and like having so much fun.
Kevin. He's generally one of the nicest dudes I know. Just such a sweetheart.
Yeah, he seemed like it. He was like every single time the crowd applauded, he like the biggest like genuine smile on his face. Like he was just so happy.
Also,
to be there.
he's done so many support tours. I mean, he's toured with everybody. He's toured with Thrice and Say Anything and Manchester Orchestra, of course, and Brand New before he was with Brand New, and all these bands. And it's just one of those. He's a dude you want to be on tour with. Yeah. So it's. Everybody everyone who knows him likes him, so
that's so cool.
He's
yeah, man, that front bottom show was fucking crazy. And he told a story before one of his songs where he said that he saw them playing as a two-piece back in the day, and they were playing backflip, or not backflip, I'm sorry, they were playing the Beers. They were playing the Beers, and it was the first time he ever heard them, and he was on his way to see his mom who came and saw the show. He heard like the chorus or whatever, like when he was talking about steroids and stuff, and he stops and he looks over at them and goes, "That's good," and then he walked away to his mom, and then that was it. He completely forgot about the front bottoms or whatever. Like that was the first time he saw them, and then I guess something happened in between there, and they opened for each other and stuff. But
yeah,
that's super cool though. Like to have that memory. They seem those guys too seem like cool dudes. Their drummer can play his ass off.
They're great.
Like holy shit. I like Brian's odd, awkward stage demeanor. Like he like shuffles his feet back and forth, and he does these weird like he's in like they're all in pajamas too, by the way. Like for the most part pajamas. Like
I'm not surprised.
Like gym shorts and baggy t-shirts. Like they literally woke up.
That sounds about right.
That's awesome though, man. I that sounds like the dream. Just to like wake up and jump on the stage. So now as far as like getting bigger, you know what? Fuck that. I have a question for you. How does a band or artist go about getting a press kit together? Because I get asked that all the time, and I'm like, dude, I don't fucking have one, so I don't know. But like, I feel like that's information that I need to have, and I need to figure out for myself. But people ask me that all the time too.
I mean, sometimes it's just as literally as simple as opening up Word and typing out, everything you've got to say about, I mean, This is one where it's like exponentially harder for like a new artist than someone who's been around for a while, because when you're new at, it's your resume. It's just like anything else where you're writing your resume, and it's like when you're starting it, you don't have a lot to put in there. So you embellish a ton about your guitar teacher or whatever. Fucking hate that one. But, and then once you've been around, like I remember when I was working with this band Stiletto Formal, who I think we talked about last time, but that was one thing, like we were constantly redoing their press, and it got to the point where it was like literally cutting sentences to keep it a page long, where it was like, God, but we want to mention this and we want to mention that, and it was like, well, if we cut this, like, oh, we need to, every time it was like we felt we needed to add something, it was like, what sentence comes out so that we can add what we're doing now, and so it's just, if you haven't got any, it's just building up your press, and then eventually the lamest thing on your press gets replaced by the newest thing, and then eventually it's, it just comes around. So
I like the I never. Maybe I'm just dumb, but I never thought of it as like a resume. That makes way more sense. I feel like that puts things into perspective for people.
Yeah, it's, hey, I don't know anything about your band. I want to read one page on it, and it's like what I think every band should think of it in, like, what's the one sentence bio on you, what's the one paragraph bio you, and what's the one page bio on you, and it's like you have the one sentence for your Twitter headline, description. You've got, what's the one sentence that describes who your band is, and then what's the one paragraph that describes it, and then what's the full, more of the full story. And it's like, I think some of the big ones to stay away from is, unless you've really got a good story on how you guys met, most of the time that doesn't seem to help. Everyone learned to play guitar when they were 9 because of their uncle or something, like things like that. Things like that, unless it's like Jack Black taught me how to play, Jack White or Jack Black taught me how to play guitar. It's like, okay, that should be in there. But if not, so sort of some of those biographical ones, unless it's not really relevant to the act. If that's part of the identity of the project, then that should be in there. The other one I hate on thinking of that is every band that tells me their band is hard to describe are always the easiest bands to describe. And it's like, oh, we're a mix of a ton of things. No, you're emo revival. No, you're a grindcore band. It's like, but it's like, you should be able to tell me what your band, maybe not like perfectly describe it, but like, you can tell me in a sentence whether you're a country band or a death metal band, or like, are you playing, improvisational jazz? Like, okay, like, yeah, you might have some interesting flavor to that or flunks, but it's like, it shouldn't be that hard to tell me what you're doing.
Yeah, and the thing with that is a lot of bands don't realize, because your head's so far into it that and all the intricacies of it that other people can't see, and that's why you feel like it's hard to describe. But when you look at it from an outside perspective or pull yourself away from it a little bit, you can see like, okay, yeah, we're a surf pop band, whatever.
I think it's not even that. It's like some of these bands, I think, know exactly where they are. They just don't want to say it, or feel weird saying it. And it's like,
I guess that was just my experience. That was my experience with it personally. It was like I remember when we first got started saying like it's hard to describe, or I would try to put two things together. I remember for a while I said we were just Beach Boys on coke, or like just little things like that. Like, I guess, but then someone told me, well, they were on coke, and then I couldn't use that anymore. But
they were on coke.
So, but that's the thing. Eventually, I was able to kind of pull myself away from it and be like, okay, got it. It's surf pop. We can just say that, and we're good to go.
Yeah, and it's, for me, on the other, like, from where I'm sitting, I'm booking country shows, I'm booking hip hop shows, I'm booking DJ shows, I'm booking death metal shows, I'm booking indie rock shows. Tell me where you fit in that. Like,
right.
It's
Totally.
like, oh, we're hard to describe. It's like, so do you want to open for the hip hop act or the death metal band? Like, which, like, where do you fit in that?
Are you putting on the Dying Fetus show at Club Red?
I'm not.
Oh man, Gate Creeper's on that show. I'm
Gate
so
Creeper
stoked.
is on that
I can't
show.
wait to go. He just got off a long ass tour. Did you see he hung out with Post Malone?
I'm
Chase?
not surprised.
So like, okay,
We talked about Chase for a long time
Yeah,
last
we
podcast.
did. So now I have a new
Not that
thing.
anyone has heard it. I'm just going to keep
I
bringing
know,
that
that's
up.
fine. That's fine. I deserve it. So like, I have another Chase story that rolled onto this one. So it's so funny too because I've only hung out with this guy one time, but he so on Instagram so Post Malone. At first it's just a picture of him and Post Malone, and I was like, oh wow, that's really crazy. And then I go to his story, and him and Post Malone are playing beer pong, but they're playing with Red Bull, like sugar-free Red Bull, because Chase is sober. So like they're playing Red Bull pong or whatever, and like Post Malone's in like shitty boxer shorts and a t-shirt, and he looks like shit, and like they're like playing together. And then there's another picture later that night of posts wearing a Gatecreeper shirt for his set. And I was like, dude, that's fucking awesome, man.
Well, that kid was into metal before he was whatever he is now. So
yeah, I didn't know that. Like an article came out about that a couple weeks later, but like I had no idea that he was into that.
I
stuff
forget
beforehand.
the band. He tried out for like a Total Warped Tour band on guitar and like didn't get it. I want to maybe Empire the Crown or what, someone like that. I'm not a huge Post Malone fan. So
I'm not either. His new album, though, did surprise. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. It's not on my liked list for the year, but it's definitely like I listened to it and enjoyed it more than I kind of had expected that I was going to. Especially for an album that's like 20 fucking some plus songs long.
Yeah,
like that's the thing, man. They keep rap artists and R&B artists are either putting out albums that are erroneously long, or they're putting out 7-track, like the Kanye Wyoming series that he did. He put out like 5 or 6 albums that were like 7 to 9 tracks long. That's a cool idea, but there's people who are putting out an hour-and-a-half rap albums just to rank up the streams. Just the more tracks you have, the more streams you can get, and it's just like it's fucking obnoxious because I want to because I'm trying to listen to the albums and I don't want to listen to this fucking I don't know, whatever. Drake. Drake put out the double album. Like, I don't need to listen to Drake for an hour and a half.
So I have a rant that every band I've talked to is probably really sick of me hearing, and that is...
I want to hear it.
I have been ranting for for over a decade now that bands need to get over the whole concept of an album. And I think it's something that hip-hop does really...
Jump on the mic more. I want to hear this.
Oh.
You're good. I want to hear this. Let's get real.
No, but there's this... All these rock bands are really stuck on this format of the album of 10 to 15 songs. It's an album. We're going to work on it. They're all going to be cohesive. Then we're going to disappear for 2 years, and then we're going to come back with an album and hope you remember us. And every band is on this weird old... our grandpa's cycle of releasing music, and you look at all these hip-hop acts, they're putting out a double album, but they also put out a single, and they put out a mixtape, and they put out an EP, and Drake, this double album, he puts out 6 or 7 projects a year, not an album, and if you're putting out that much content, there's going to be a lot of fluff, there's going to be some throwaway, and you listen to it once and you remember the 5 songs you like and you forget about the other 5 songs and you add it to your playlist or whatever. But all these hip-hop acts are really good about just continuously releasing songs, continuously doing something different. One EP is not like the next. They're all with different collaborators. They all sound unique, even within an artist. You listen to one Drake record, does not sound like the last Drake record. And then you hear these rock bands, and they go 16 months without releasing anything, and then they release 12 songs that sound like a very bad copy of the last 12 songs that you liked.
And let me interrupt real fast. They release 4 fucking songs before, like within the month before the album comes out. So you've already heard a quarter.
That
of the
I actually
album.
think is a little bit. I mean, that's more the way it is. I mean, spreading those releases out is actually more what they should be doing. But but it's like this whole we're going to stick to this 1970s format, I think is one of the things that's just killing rock. Whereas there's just so much more creativity on releasing music in hip hop and EDM and everywhere that blurs in those and R&B, and there's more collaboration. There's more, they're trying more things, and it's like, we've got this one idea. We're going to throw out 2 songs. You didn't like it. Fuck it. 3 months later, we're going to have 4 new songs. And it's just this, those artists are constantly releasing music. And you look at all these rock bands are going a year. They're going 2 years. And even on the local level where it's that EP was great 9 months ago, 12 months ago, 15 months ago. And it's everyone forgot about it in that time. Whereas these hip hop acts are really good at just constantly doing stuff and constantly releasing stuff, really working on all their their video channels and their social channels and their Spotify channels and their playlists. And all these rock bands, we put out a cassette tape, And it's like,
Okay, I feel personally fucking attacked right now.
What?
I said I feel personally attacked right now. I literally did went 12 months without releasing anything and just released a fucking cassette tape.
I just keep saying there's a reason everyone's talking about SoundCloud rappers and not cassette tape rockers.
That's true.
And it's entirely about format. It's entirely about how you're releasing it. And it's like the cassette tape, cool, release it have it at your merch table. I'm not saying you physically shouldn't make one, but I don't know if this is true, but I think it's still true. I know it was true, but I think it's true that you still cannot buy Chance the Rapper in a physical product.
Really? I didn't know that.
I think that's still true. I know as of a year ago that was still true.
Wow.
He was definitely selling out arenas, and there was no physical product to have a Chance the Rapper record.
Wow.
No one's bought it in a record store.
That's crazy.
It's only online.
So that means he won a Grammy.
On a completely digital record.
Wow, that's nuts.
Yeah, no, when he won the Grammy, he definitely had not released anything. Whether they've done any vinyl box set or whatever since, now that he's huge, who knows what he's done? I'm sure there was some promo stuff somewhere.
For sure.
But and it's also one that I see all these bands, they do the 7-inch or they do the EP, the cassette or whatever, and then they're not working on the digital version at all. It's like, where's the video? Why isn't this on Spotify at the same time? It's like, yeah, it's cool to do the vinyl for your fans that are willing to pay for it. It's cool to have the cassette tape at your merch table, but that cassette tape's only getting in people's hands if they're at your merch table. Meanwhile, if you're a SoundCloud rapper, everyone on the planet can find your music. And you wonder why people are discovering these SoundCloud rappers and no one's discovering all these indie bands that are oh, we went 9 months and now we've got a 7-inch and now we're going to go another 10 months because we're working on the next one.
And it takes fucking it takes 6 to 8 months on a good year to get all of that shit processed. Vinyl specifically. If you want vinyl, you're waiting on
Vinyl's a couple months.
Oh, it's only a couple months?
Oh, you're at 3 months if you're lucky. On
3 months if you're lucky.
3 to 6 months depending on... Well, it also depends on when you're trying to get it. If you're trying to get it in October when everybody else is, or if you're trying to get it in April for Record Store Day, you're going to have a much better one. Whereas if you're trying to get it in January, that's after the Christmas rush, you're going to get it in 3 months. Or,
totally. No, I get you. Yeah, but that's what they do.
No, but it's just one of these. It's just I don't know. I've been ranting about this to bands forever, and now I'm getting more and more.
You're just
vocal about it.
Yeah,
no, but it's just I was trying to convince bands of this 10 years ago. And everyone, no, we want to do our album. We're working on our album. And now, 10 years later, it's oh no, that's clearly the wrong, It's the other one is I think the bands, and this is definitely more the established bands, I think did a really disservice to a number of years ago when everything started to switch to streaming. And started to go on YouTube and started to go on Spotify. And you had all these established rock bands that were complaining about the economics and their royalty checks weren't as good.
This is a good conversation to have. Okay, yes.
Yeah, and their royalty checks weren't as good. And they told all their fans, this is a bad deal. This isn't fair. And all the rock fans have gone, yeah, isn't Spotify a bad way to support music? And now you fast forward 3 or 4, 5 years, however long. Spotify is 8 years now. I think it's 5 in the U.S.
Uh-huh.
Spotify is paying out billions of dollars to artists. Just billions of dollars to artists. And all these rock bands have convinced their fans that it's a bad way to do it. And meanwhile, all the hip-hop acts at the same time were check out my Spotify.
Yeah.
And all these big hip-hop acts saw the future and saw the direction it was going and saw the breaking down of the gatekeepers and, they're sharing each other... all these hip-hop acts are sharing each other's stuff. They're putting each other's songs on their mixtapes and sharing in a big way and saw the value of the way all this, how streaming works. And all these rock bands who put out their record and then hope the gatekeepers that support them are going to share it to everybody. And then they see their royalty checks going down in 2004, go, wait, why are royalty checks going down? We don't like the system. And it's yeah, just wait for it to grow. There's only a few million people listening to these channels. And now it's just Amazon is paying out billions. YouTube is paying out billions. Spotify is paying out billions. And there's definitely something to be said of like the economics of that. It is most of that's going to the established players. It's not, if no one's listening to you on Spotify, you're not getting any checks.
Yeah, for sure.
But, it's, I think rock bands did a big disservice by discrediting those channels.
I agree.
For years.
Fucking Tool, their music still isn't on Spotify.
Dumb.
Yeah, right? What the fuck? That's crazy.
Okay, so Drake.
But they're one of the few. Them and Jay-Z. But I understand Jay-Z because he has his own.
Well,
like,
Jay-Z has
now.
entirely different economics where
Yes.
he's trying to convince someone to buy Tidal.
Yeah.
And they did put this record on Spotify right away because they saw how bad the streams were on Tidal. And their little trick of forcing people to sign up for Tidal on the like third record, everyone went, fuck it, I'll wait. Whereas like the first time they put out Lemonade or whatever, everyone's like, I got to sign up for Tidal. I got to hear this. And now everyone's like, nah, you tricked me in that once. I'm going to wait for Spotify. And so they like immediately reversed course and added it to Spotify because they realized they weren't going to hit any of the charts.
Yeah, the new one went on Spotify the day it came out.
Drake's new record in 3 days, I think, racked up 480 million streams in 3 days.
I was one of them. I listened to it in the first 3 days. I listened to the whole fucking thing.
I haven't, but I get that like everybody else has listened to Drake.
I just listened to it because I have like a manifesto to listen to as much as possible.
But that's awesome. But it's like, and you can do that. Other one I heard someone talking about recently, and I can't remember is how one of the things that technology is done, and especially in this format, is I don't know how to express this I'm going to butcher how this concept is, but it's taken the risk out of purchasing music to where you think about back when the CD boom was in its full swing, how many records got bought that people either didn't like when they listened, once they finally got it, or someone bought a record that they didn't know. Grandma buys you a new Buzz record, and you go, Grandma, why did you buy me Chumbawamba? Which I did have that record. But like you get these things where there's like this huge cost that was holding up the industry where 50% of purchases were never listened to or never seriously listened to or listened to once.
Yeah.
You get 50% of the entire market was people who didn't know they didn't like it or didn't realize that there was one good track and then never listened to the CD again. It's 50% of the entire market. And now with streaming, you don't have that because you listen to 2 tracks, you realize you don't like it. Maybe you stream it once, and then you go, wait, this record isn't very good. I like the one song, and you never stream it again, and there's no economics to that. And so a lot of the money that, disappeared in 2001 was all that money of not making bad decisions, and not buying a record you didn't want. Or not buying the next record when the first record was great and the second record sucks. And so like that's one of the problems of that if you look at it from a big sort of top-down economic view is no one's ever going to be convinced to pay $20 for a piece of crap music again. You just can't turn that back. And so all these artists, especially the ones that are the one-hit wonders, you can't convince 20 million people to drop $15 on a one-hit wonder anymore. Whereas you could in the 90s because, hey, it's the new thing. I got to go try it.
Blind Melon.
Yeah. They had a couple hits.
Yeah,
that band was pretty big for a while. But I also think that they might have, who knows what their career if they didn't die.
I agree. Those 2 albums are, I don't know why I said Blind Melon.
No, but
now that I think about it, those first 2 albums, those only 2 albums are pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he died like in the middle of that, so it's not really quite the same one-hit wonder when
you're right,
the tragedy of it.
Yeah.
No, but the Chumbawamba example is like the biggest one where it sold so many records and then no one cared after that, and it's like you can't do that today, Yeah.
And it's I guess that's true. And I feel like one-hit wonders will still seem like they're doing a lot better than they actually are because they're still putting out music. They're still putting out music on the internet that everybody can see. They're still putting out music videos. They're still like I don't see one-hit wonders as much anymore because everyone is fighting to put up as much content as they can.
Well, one is
That's
you just
my
have
end anyway.
Well, one is you just have way fewer hits.
Yeah.
So, if there's 20 massive hits in a year where there used to be 60, or I don't know quite the numbers on it, but it's something like that. So a lot of those, and this is again back to that not making mistakes in purchase, consumers not making mistakes in purchases, is it's harder to launch that mediocre song into that level of hit as now than it was then. So a lot more songs become kind of listened to, but there needs to be a lot more to launch it to that top level.
How do you feel about rock radio? This is something that I have very strong opinions on, but I want to know from like kind of what you think of it as someone who like really, the ins and outs of the business a lot better than I do.
Well,
I'm just an idiot.
It's dying. It's absolutely dying, and it's. There's a lot of problems there. One is, it follows, not leads. They're not breaking artists; they're following what's already there. But, one problem is the formats are so rigid that anything remotely interesting doesn't really fit within any of the existing formats, and therefore doesn't really get played. But then it makes it boring because the interesting stuff is barely getting played. So the stuff on the fringes where you get bands like Avett Brothers who don't really fit in country, but they also don't fit in alt rock. And the alt radio stations say they're a country band, and the country stations say they're an indie band, and they have there's no room for them at radio. Meanwhile, they're selling out Red Rocks and playing Mesa. They can sell 5,000 tickets and have headlining sets on festivals, or very high billing on festivals, and yet they can't break radio. They can have their albums debut number 1, and there's no place for them on radio. Whereas, like, you look at, like, hip-hop radio is so much less rigid and so much faster changing that if you start to pop off in hip-hop radio changes every 4 or 5 years. And a hip-hop station today is playing songs that don't sound anything like what that same station was placed in 5 or 6 years ago.
Even fucking 93.3, which I feel like is a middle ground between maybe like a hip hop radio and a rock radio. They're just kind of playing popular hits. You're not going to hear the new Shinedown on there, but you're probably not also going to hear like some of the really hardcore rap songs on there. But 93.3 is a good example of a radio station that every year I'm hearing, like, yeah, they're going to play some of the older stuff too over the last couple of years, but I'm always hearing the newer hits that are coming out just that year. Pop music, and I feel like pop music is the same way as hip hop. What you're saying is it's like it's cycling through newer stuff, whereas rock radio, I'm still hearing fucking Machine Head from Bush. Like, come on, are you kidding me?
Why isn't that song on a classic station?
I don't understand why. And if they're new music, it's new music from older bands. Like, it's new Disturbed. Fantastic. Yay, hurrah. Like,
well, one is a catch-22 that radio has had, is that they're so concerned with their sort of, they're looking for, what's now you call millennial, but they're very concerned with that 25 to 35-year-old demo. That's all they care about, because that's what, there's a handful of big advertisers that keep radio alive. It's your car companies, it's your insurance companies, it's those products that need to hit everybody. That's what's keeping radio alive. And they're ones that have big budgets. A car dealership has huge advertising budgets, more than, anything else in retail. They're going to have the biggest, if you think of them in that way. And so, like, there's these few product segments that are keeping radio alive and advertising, and they want that 25 to 35-year-old audience. And so they're trying to play stuff that caters to them. Well, but the problem with that is, by ignoring the 18 to 25-year-olds for decades, well, that audience is now turning into the target demo, and they're wondering, why can't we get 25-year-olds listening to the radio anymore? And it's because every 25-year-old has Spotify, and it's like, the other one that I think is going to be the big one, I think radio is going to fall off a cliff here soon. Not in the next year or 6 months or anything like that. The cliff is going to be, we're a little ways away, and it's going to be internet in the car. As soon as everyone has internet in the car, radio's done.
I agree.
And that's going to be the tipping point for radio. I think I'll exclude sports radio. Talk radio and sports radio I'll exclude, because that's a totally different totally different beast.
I agree. I know
that's
people.
That's totally different form.
I totally agree. I know people who listen to Homer's Morning Sickness, but they don't listen to the radio. Like they just he's funny. He listens to talk.
Yeah,
stuff,
same. Howard Stern is an
exactly.
example.
Yeah.
NPR is this. I mean, NPR is doing better than ever.
Yeah.
So things like that are. Bracket those off as a different conversation. But the internet in the car is what's going to kill music radio. And the thing is that people don't update their cars as fast as everything else. And it's also tech takes longer to spread down the chain in cars. So something that's introduced as a luxury item this year is going to take 5 to 10 years to get down to regular consumer cars, or sort of the low end or mid-tier cars are going to take longer, as opposed to like your iPhone, where people turn those over every 6 months to a year to 2 years, and the latest tech is in the average consumer's hands very fast. Whereas like big improvements in cars can take a decade or more to become standard, just because you don't turn over cars as anywhere near the same speed. And so, but that you're starting to see that in cars now with satellite radio and internet, and luxury cars all have internet in them now. Newer cars are all Bluetooth compatible. So I mostly listen to the internet in my car through my phone is how I mostly listen to music in the car and Sirius. But when that really starts hitting where everyone has the internet in their car, suddenly Spotify is going to win the car.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of their long game too, is some of these other services that are online of why isn't Spotify trying to get into radio or satellite or any of those other things. It's because they're ahead. They're waiting for the cars to get to them. And once that happens, like if I can have be playing my Spotify in my house on my computer, walk out the door, get in my car, get out of my car and listen on my phone, and I didn't change any of my playlists, like that's just going to change a ton of stuff.
That's true, and I also feel like, and this might be because I'm a very optimistic person sometimes to a fault, and I feel like this might just be me being optimistic, but I feel like younger people now see through bullshit easier than before, and that
goes back to what I was saying about the internet makes it easier to not make this bad decisions and purchases.
And I feel like it's taking like welcome to the morning hour on like stupid fucking radio shows, you know what I'm talking about? Like I feel like those lame and like where they're asking people, and this affects me like as a podcaster because this is exactly what I'm trying to not do. But like I feel like all that stupid like the weird commercialization interviews that no one really cares about, they're just pushing stuff.
Well, no, but the problem is I think you're on the right track, but the other way to think of it is I don't think younger listeners want to listen to an hour of a morning show to hear 14 minutes of good content. And when you've got the interview segments broken down into 3 and 4 minute pieces and you can just start on it, wait, I can listen to Joe Rogan podcast and listen to an hour if I like that podcast of great content, and I listen to an hour of it with one ZipRecruiter commercial in the middle, and that's it. Or maybe 1 or 2 commercials depending on some of them.
He does them at the top, and that's it.
I don't listen to that podcast particularly, but but like, so some podcasts are doing 1 or 2 commercials in an hour of content, and if you can get 1 to 2 minutes, that amount of content, younger consumers, they don't want to listen to an hour and a half to get 12 minutes of good content. And
they don't need to, because the artists usually are posting videos about it. They're posting Instagram stories about it. They're talking about it online. They don't need to listen to a third-party source because they can get it directly from them on their Twitter.
Well, there's a little bit, but I mean, there's still some of that too, of especially if you're talking about I'm on and I'm going to do 2 2-minute interview segments in the hour, and that's the interview where you talk for 2 minutes. That's an Instagram post. So if that's the level of depth or discussion you're getting to, which again goes back to the talk radio and sports radio, where it being a different beast, or the NPR being a different beast, where there really is content in that hour.
Where do you think, like, okay, because I guess rock-centered music in all of its crazy subgenres is kind of my center point of all genres, I guess. Like whether it's indie rock, folk rock, metal, whatever, everything is usually guys with guitars. That's kind of, whether they're acoustic or electric, that seems to be my center. So where do you feel like that music is going, whether positive or negatively? Like, do you see a future in that kind of? Because it is true, like, hip hop in all manner of ways. I mean, fucking Warped Tour is going away because the young audience is not going to Warped Tour anymore. It's the same like 30-year-old
Warped
guys.
Tour is a very there's very complicated economics with that. So I mean,
I heard
there is a very top line. Less people are into rock. You know, there is that sort of top line demand issue, but there is also just economics of producing a tour it's so much more expensive than it used to be. And when it started, Coachella didn't exist when it started. Lollapalooza was a tour. Lollapalooza didn't exist when it started because Lollapalooza died, and that's what Warped Tour grew out of. Was Lollapalooza died and Warped Tour came out of it.
Oh yeah, because Lollapalooza was like Rollins Band back in the day, and like Body Count and shit. Like,
it was all stuff.
Jane's Addiction.
Well, the other one is you look at Lollapalooza, and now you go like, man, that was huge. But it was all those bands before they broke. It was 9 Inch Nails and Jane's Addiction and Nirvana before those bands were those bands. You know, when they were the developing Warped Tour bands. Uh-huh. So Warped Tour just has a ton more competition that it didn't have. But when it started. So the economics are just very different.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. That's I heard that they could keep going. That what they released, I guess, was they could keep going, but they didn't because the youth audience isn't there anymore.
There's a piece of that.
Yeah.
That is one of many, many factors. The other one is Kevin's been doing it for 25 years, and I can't imagine him. There's never going to be a Warped Tour date that doesn't have Kevin running it. And it's like that very much is his tour. It's his baby. And he probably could have sold it to Live Nation or AEG or CAA or somebody, and they would have done it without him. But he's never going to do that. That's his tour, and it wouldn't be the same without him. And, he probably could have sold it for a big check and walked away, and it would be a bad version, very different thing next year. And he doesn't want to do that. But
that's awesome. So, yeah, anyway,
back to the rock music. I think another one of my rants lately is that I think too many bands right now are doing throwback to old bands. And you get
another fucking personal attack.
I've never listened to your music, so I have no idea what I'm saying.
It's totally a joke. But it was all 60s inspired shit.
That's so big, and I think that's so big in what rock bands are trying to play, and it's not big in what audiences are trying to listen to.
Yeah.
And so we mean more rock bands that are forward looking and trying to do something new and different, and not trying to, be throwback to something else. Or if you are going to have elements of something else, it's got to be new or interesting. And I think that's something, there aren't throwback hip hop acts the way they're, like you look at these new hip hop acts and they're all talking trash on Tupac or whatever, because like they're not trying to sound like that. They're all trying to sound new or different. And it's like doing something new and different is so ingrained in the genes of hip hop. Whereas like in rock, it's so genre, like what are you doing? What's your genre? And all these bands get very defined very early on, and then have a hard time breaking anything new or different within that genre, because then they get, so this is the genre I'm doing, and we kind of need to move past that, and I don't know how we do it.
That's crazy. Do you feel like, because I feel like everything goes in cycles, do you think rock music is going to make a comeback at some point? It's going to like, because I feel like every like 20 or 30 years a genre kind of comes back. It kind of rolls around again.
I don't know how much that...
It's still like, it's still popular, but like, you know what I mean? Because right now, Guitar Center is selling more fucking DJ equipment than anything. So like, do you think at one point it's going to come back?
I don't know. I think when something does come back that more resembles rock, there'll probably be quite a bit of debate about whether it is rock or not. And it's like, I think there's got to be more depth to electronic music in future. I think one of the big problems with electronic music is it's not lyrically driven. There's no story. There's no vocals. There's no lyrics. And I think people that can bridge that gap in future, so whether there's a guitar in it or not, I think there's going to be more mix.
Ooh.
So like think of something like that huge Avicii song where like why it was so transcending. It's guitar driven EDM with a great melody and a chorus, and it was just a massive hit. Same with, I don't know. I just think like that's a big piece that's missing there, which is something rock can bring to it. So if you have, something that is mixing those two more,
something rock inspired, but that isn't classical, kind of what we think of as rock music.
So there's a way to include more samples and electronics in rock without sounding cheesy. And I don't know any good examples of anyone doing it, but.
That. Because I understand what you mean by cheese, because I'll hear some electronic songs with guitar samples in them and stuff, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah, and there's some interesting stuff going on in electronic music that is trying to introduce some of those elements. And because a lot of those DJs and producers were all in rock bands before they were DJs. They were all guitar players, or at least, maybe not some of the newer ones that are young, but a lot of the older ones were, or at least wanted to be. So I don't know where, if rock is going to come back, it's got to be new and different. It's not going to come back. You can have some flukes with some really big throwback stuff, but if rock is really going to make it, if there's going to be the next sound of rock again, it's got to be doing something different, and not just a throwback.
The albums that I've heard this year from rock bands who were really popular when I was growing up are awful. And there's almost no exception. And sure, a lot of those bands weren't that good to begin with, but chart toppers like Shinedown and Godsmack and 3 Days Grace,
I never really listened to those bands.
Because they weren't very good in the beginning. But today, it's even more offensive than it was back then. Because back then, at least it was like the new thing, kind of. It was like this over angsty, kind of rock thing.
One, I think you get if you're talking like active rock or hard rock or metal, you get this catch-22 bands are in where the only way to come out of the gate and get some buzz and hype is being so extreme. And so you've got to be the most extreme death metal. You've got to be totally brutal. You've got to be so intense that you make it that no one outside of that genre wants to listen to it. And you listen to some of these rock bands, like Metallica could not make it in metal today because it's just too melodic. It's too lyric driven. Like Metallica today, if you put out some of
the Black
Loaded
album.
or the Black Album, every metal fan would be like, "Oh, that's pussy stuff." And
Bullet for My Valentine, man.
Well, yeah, but these bands are so extreme that they can't write a hit the way a lot of that classic metal and hard rock stuff did. The way 9 Inch Nails did, or the way, even Korn or other stuff in the 90s was writing great hits like Nirvana or something that was rock but still could write a hit. And now you've just got it so it's so niche that you've got to be Watain or something to get any buzz within the community. But then when you get that buzz, everybody else doesn't want to listen to it, and it's like some of those bands are really good, but they have no crossover appeal. There's no chorus, there's no hook.
Yeah, and some of them do great. I mean, there's bands like Dying Fetus, and there's bands like there's.
Well, at a club level, I'm kind of talking more at a large scale, because the only way you can come out is to be Dying Fetus.
Yeah,
and then you've got your hardcore fan base of metal fans, or a Gatecreeper.
Yeah,
Gatecreeper's a great example of this. Who's great, but it's just so niche and so extreme that even your average metal fan isn't going to appreciate it. Even if you go poll people at a Metallica show, they're not going to appreciate that. That and that's where everything in heavy metal in rock has gone, is that the only way you can get that buzz or be cool as a new band is be so extreme that no one else wants to listen to it,
or just so niche,
extreme in
the same thing.
Yeah, it's it may not necessarily be that brutal, but it's so niche.
That's how my band was. The whole our whole goal. I mean, it was stupid. We were like in our late teens or whatever. But like the whole goal with Phantom Party was let's try to get on Burger Records, or let's try to play like let's appeal to the beach goth scene, because Fiddler is really popular right now and Waves is really popular right now. Let's try to ride like into their tent of things. Like this is like, so it's like I completely agree with what you're saying. It's like rock bands now, especially indie rock bands, they just look for a niche, and if they can excel in that niche, that's it. That's what they're looking for. But like, Fiddler is not playing fucking Auction. You know what I mean? Like, they're not really appealing to that many people. But the people they are appealing to feel like they're like the biggest thing ever. And honestly, Frank Turner is a perfect middle ground for that. Like,
no, I mean, Frank, I'd say is more because
he's
just writing great.
He's niche as fuck, though.
I don't think his songs are.
His songs
I don't think
aren't,
his music.
But
I don't
like,
think
he's not as popular as he should be.
Well, that's a different one, but
Yeah.
I mean, he's still doing arenas in Europe, and
That's
I mean,
true. That's true.
he's got songs on the radio and doing some big venues in America. So I mean, he's
getting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like he's kind of what I feel like his level of popularity is really like, I don't want to say healthy, but like as far as like, because I feel like you can get way too famous, you know what I mean? You're a little too popular. Everyone knows who the fuck you are. You're Katy Perry walking around, but you also don't want to be some teeny tiny band from the sticks. I feel like if I was gonna be in a band, I would want to like sell out Van Buren. Like, that would be awesome. Like selling out like a 1,200. I don't know. Van Buren's like 1,200, right?
No, it's like 2,000.
Oh fuck! Really? It's 2,000. So yeah, like a Van Buren would be perfect. Maybe push Alkaline Trio level fame, like somewhere around there. Because I've thought about that before. Like, if I was in a band, how big would I want to be? Just like daydreaming. Like, would I want to be Green Day famous, or would I want to be like Alkaline Trio? And I feel like somewhere in between Frank and Alkaline is kind of where I would want to be. Because you don't want to be so. Joe Rogan said it the best. He said if you can Google the height of somebody and it pops up, you're too famous.
You can Google the height. Okay, that's a funny one.
Like
that's a weird one.
Yeah.
I think that would be different if you're talking about athletes, because that sort of basic stat would be so true for like every like weight and height is going to be like something sports fans argue about, right?
That's true, but like if you're like a musician
or
whatever, like because you can Google like Brad Pitt height and it'll show up in the search bar. You don't even have to hit search. Like you can't do that with Frank. You'll have to go to like a subreddit, to find.
Yeah, I don't know how famous you've got to be to get that. That's an interesting one. I like that one. I think when you see people's like wealth is another one where it's people are actually trying to calculate your net worth and stuff.
What is that? What does that mean to someone who's like you're what I would consider a businessman? What exactly does net worth mean? Is that like if you sold everything you have?
Yeah, that's all your assets. So it's I mean, that's all your assets. So that doesn't mean how much cash do you have in your bank account you can use on your ATM, but it's what's the value of everything you own?
How is that calculated? How can I why is that on Google? Why can I find that?
Well, I mean, you get really rough estimates on like if you're looking up actors and celebrities, but some of that would be what are your, all these things are assets. So like what is, if you're Harrison Ford, what is the value of your royalty checks from Star Wars? He probably, his accountants know how much he makes every year off that, and it's like next year he's going to get, I don't know what the cycle is on something like that, but every 6 months he gets that check. So he's got that check from Star Wars every 6 months. He's got that check from Indiana Jones every 6 months. And that may not be cash, but there's a value to projecting that out for 10 years, so they go, oh, he gets this much every 6 months, times that by 10. That's what he's worth because he's going to get that in,
Got it.
And it's like you just add up all those revenue streams that are coming at them or pieces of ownership, and so.
Are you a stocks guy at all?
No.
No, I'm just I'm going through my head of like.
No, but that would be an example of like.
Guy?
No, but that would be an example of like something that goes in their net worth is like, what's your stock portfolio? That's not cash you can access, but it is something you own. You own like, I own X stocks in whatever company. So, and you look at some of the really rich, wealthy entertainers, that's where they've made a lot of money, is once they've got, 50 cents getting equity in vitamin water, then Coke buys it. Suddenly that piece of vitamin water is worth a ton of money. He made more money off vitamin water than he ever did off his music.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that lately, man. Like, I've been thinking about, like, should I start investing in stuff? Like, I feel like I'm too young to make smart investments. But, like...
Yeah, don't do... Yeah, no. The average consumers get screwed on the stock market. Don't do that.
Really? I mean, I don't know dick about the stock market. Don't even know where to start. I wouldn't...
Then don't do it.
I wouldn't invest in the stock market. But, like, I feel like, I don't know, like, once I enter my 30s, should I, like, buy property and start accruing?
Well, that would be another piece. Yeah,
like
everything else. Yeah. Real estate. Yeah.
Because I feel like that, because I talked to people, like I was talking to my...
I am the worst person to be giving financial advice to anybody. So
I was talking to someone today, and someone I work with, and his parents are both retired teachers, but they have like an airplane hangar on their property and like really nice cars and this huge like 4,000 square foot house. And I was asking, I was like, but they're retired teachers. How the fuck do they make this money? And he's like, he runs through the gamut of all these things they started investing in when they were like in their early 20s, and now all of it's paying off because they bought property in downtown Seattle and all this kind of shit, and now all of it's working. And I was like, fuck, man, I should start looking into that. Like
tons of property and real estate's a big one.
Do you feel like Phoenix is going to become almost like like an LA? I hear people say that all the time. Like in a sense of like it's the like a entertainment cultural hub.
I don't think we're anywhere near that.
I mean, do you ever foresee that? I see people say, because I know like celebrities buy houses in Phoenix, and people kind of like it's almost like a sub thing.
No, but celebrities buy houses here to get away from that. They're not buying houses and moving their business here.
Got it.
So, no one's setting up their management firm in Phoenix to be close to those clients. They're still all in LA. So even though a lot of those, athletes live in Paradise Valley or whatever, it doesn't bring any of that industry here.
Yeah.
Or there's probably some pieces of it, but
that's what I like about Phoenix. I like that it's insular, but it's also kind of its own weird culture as far as music goes. Like now, I'm too ambitious to want to stay in that, but I think it's really cool that it's so strong, and I want to support it as much as possible. At least that's my perspective.
One is we're the 5th largest city, so everything's going to have at least some presence here.
That's true. Oh, really? 5th largest city? I didn't know
We're
that.
the 5th largest city now.
Interesting.
I think that's like 5th largest metropolitan area,
Yeah.
So like counting, Tempe and everything
Chandler.
else.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. Yeah. Have you lived in the Valley for most of your life?
Yeah, I'm a native.
Native, really?
Yeah.
Where were you born
Mesa.
at?
I was born in Mesa.
Born in Mesa?
Yeah.
Very cool. Like,
Yeah.
what was Mesa like back in the day? Was it still scary?
I don't know. Same as it is now, only less of it.
Just less of it. Oh, hey. Sorry. Go on.
Oh, no. It just didn't go as far east.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Do you know... and this is something that I was arguing with some of my friends about, and I know that I know a couple of them are I met because they're listeners, so I thought I would ask this question because I debate this all the fucking time. And you might not have the answer. Do you know where AJJ is actually from in the Valley? Because I have heard they're from Mesa, and I am like dead on that opinion. But other people say like various places throughout the Valley.
I don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
On
Wikipedia, I think it just says Phoenix. But like that's what everybody says, and no one, like barely anybody's actually from Phoenix. Like most bands are from like fucking Tempe or Mesa or some shit.
I don't know the answer.
That's fine.
I'm sure I've
never mind.
Like heard, and I'm sure I've talked to them about it or knew this fact, but I couldn't settle any.
It's one of those weird, really stupid like debates that I get in with my friends. That happens quite a bit. Where it's just like
they're in Europe right now, or I might text them to find out. But,
they're in Europe right now.
I think they're in Europe right now.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Sean, when I got to talk to Frank Turner outside of the Livewire show, he was telling me that Sean stays with him every time he's in the UK, and he draws little pictures for him and he puts them up on the fridge. And his girlfriend, like back before Jess and him lived together, his girlfriend came over and was like, "What the fuck is this on your fridge?" Like, what? And he's like, "Oh, that's my friend Sean." Like
that sounds right. So
he seems like a nice dude. I'd love to meet Sean one of these days. But he lives in Tucson right now, right?
I think he's pretty much spending his time in Tucson these days. So
fucking goddamn it.
Yeah.
It's
a lot closer than when he was in Michigan.
Yeah, what was up with that? Is he
His
from
wi-
there or something?
No, his wife was going to grad school, and he toured. So she was living in Michigan, and then he was splitting his time between here touring and there.
That makes sense.
So
Doesn't really matter, I guess.
when he's touring most of the year.
Did you put on their album release show at Rebel? It was at Rebel, so I'm assuming
Yeah,
it was you.
definitely. I've done a ton of AJJ shows, so it's like, wait, which album?
Did you? Yeah, I mean, 'cause I know the Bible too. Didn't they do like 2 nights?
Yeah,
at
we
Rebel?
did 2 nights at Rebel. That one. We did an album release for the record. What was it? The Wolf.
Christmas Island.
Oh, Christmas Island. Yeah,
Was
yeah, yeah.
Before that,
We
And
did
then
that
it was
at
Smash
Crescent. We did one for Crescent. That at Crescent. So we've done.
Man. Yeah, they recorded their live album with Crescent.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
Oh, did you do that show too?
I did that show too.
That's
I
crazy.
didn't know they recorded it until after the fact, and then it's like, oh, this is a live album. Okay.
That's cool. That's one of the that's documented in a lost episode of mine because you weren't the only episode that I lost. I lost 4 fucking episodes when I did that,
And they're all gonna be better than the makeup
I
ones that we do.
I know. One of them was Jalapaz, and he was talking about doing the live album at Crescent for AJJ. I was so pissed off. You don't understand. Like, out of all the, I've done this show for a year and a half now, and 2 guests that I would consider to be like some of my like the ones who I can't believe I got were you and Jalapaz Nelson because I fucking love AJJ, and he produced the first 4 AJJ records plus the Crescent Ballroom album, and I lost both of them. Fuck. But hey man, thank you so much for coming back on the show. I really
No
appreciate it. I
problem.
feel like that's a good place. We'll end it with my self-flagellation, and we'll end it there.
We'll end it knowing that this conversation was no way as good as the one that people will not get to hear.
Yeah, I know, but I did enjoy the rant. Thank you for especially
This one was more of me ranting.
which is I like that. I like
A
that.
lot less of me name dropping.
I learned a lot. I really appreciate it, especially because
Maybe the ranting's better than the name dropping.
maybe, but I really like. I don't know, man. I'm definitely guilty of having a hard time letting go of the album. As far as
I got no problem doing that.
I know. And it's one of those things. And I feel like most artists and most people in bands know this. They know that you're right. They know that is the direction they're going in. But we're all in a collective denial because we're so in love with albums. But
Yeah.
whatever. Fuck them.
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work. Oh well, bummer.
Yeah.
Oh well, put it on. I mean, I guess what you can do is release singles, release EPs,
Just
put them
release
on a vinyl
lots
later.
of music. Release lots of music. Do lots of things. Do all the things.
Do all
Sorts of creative things. And sometimes it might be an album. Sometimes it can be all sorts of things. Just don't confine yourself to one 50-year-old format.
There you go. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming
Thanks for
on
having
again.
me.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for listening, as always. And then there's going to be some more ads and whatever after the show. So stay tuned for that, please, and follow all the links that I tell you to go to and all that kind of stuff because it helps out the show. Thank you guys so much. Get stoked. Aw, shit. Look at that. The episode's over, man. We're done. Episode is finished. Luckily, though, there are plenty of other older episodes hanging around the internet anywhere you'd like to find podcasts. iTunes, podcast apps like Stitcher or Podcast Addict for either the iPhone or the Android. My official Podbean website. I'm fucking everywhere, man. I'm building an empire. Let's take over the fucking world. Anyway, if you've made it this far, I truly appreciate you and encourage you to please reach out and say hello. I'm serious about this, guys. I really want to connect with my listeners. So whether you want to come on the show or not, drop me a line. Hit me an email at gettingstokedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I think that's it, man. Thank you guys so much for listening. It really, I know I harp on it so much, but it really, truly means everything. So thank you. Get stoked.